Milsurp Garage. Here we are. We're back. We're back with some John Browning stuff. So get ready. You knew it was leading up to John Browning eventually. We had to go there. Especially we start talking about these pistols here. We're going to have to go there. This is the Colt Model 1903. Commonly known as the Pocket Hammerless, which is a little bit of a weird name because it's like not a visible hammer, but it's not a striker fired gun. There is a hammer in here, striking a firing pin. It's just internal. So the whole idea was everything before then, you had a hammer. This nice and molded and smooth like this. As a matter of fact, this whole gun is just so ergonomically perfect for just carrying in a pocket, or just so smoothed out that it just doesn't have any lines that would get caught on anything. And a lot of things about this gun that were special for back then that you just take for granted just by looking at it now. It doesn't really look that new and unique, but back then it certainly was. This grip safety back here where your hand had to actually be holding the gun for it to fire was new. A thumb safety like this was very innovative. And just the design in general. This looks very familiar, especially up here. Kind of looks, very 1911-ish. But of course, if this is the 1903, that's before 1911. I've definitely heard a lot of people say like, "Oh yeah, this copied the design of the 1911," and I'm like, "This is called the 1903, dude. It didn't copy anything." If anyone was copying, it was definitely following the path that this thing laid. Now let's get into some John Browning history here to really understand where this thing stands. You know how I like to do that with the John Browning designs. I like to kind of be like, what was going on? It's such a sordid story. It's kind of cool to always be like right up on exactly where this fits into the scheme of things in the John Browning saga. But then we'll get into some, like specifics just about this exact example I have right here. Well, let's break it down. I got my John Browning book here to refresh my memory. This is what's interesting. By 1900, okay, where John Browning was at in 1900. Was and it really helps if you watch my past videos on like the 22s going through from the single shot, the Winchester single shot through the 22s that I featured, and other guns that lead up to 1900. John Browning was working with Winchester, and from 1883, when he first started working with them, to 1900, 44 guns he sold to Winchester. Right? So, real thing to yourself, you'd be like, there's no way that there's 44 guns. I don't know if there are 44 different John Browning designs in there. Well, the thing about Winchester was, some of those guns they produced, most of those guns, they just bought the design so that Browning wouldn't take that design somewhere else to a company that would compete. It's not like he had some kind of agreement to only deal with Winchester. He certainly didn't. So they were the ones that just bought up anything that he had. And there were a lot of designs they bought up, and he was like, "Hey, when are you going to make that thing?" And they're like, T.J. Bennett, the guy in charge of Winchester, was a real savvy businessman, and he realized that it's better to just pay now to buy the designs, all of them. The guy, even if it's not something that we can feasibly make or have the money to produce, we just want to take it out of the world so that it can't compete with us. That's how good the guns were. And so right around when this thing was made was that interesting time. How in my past videos we've spoken about when he brought the automatic shotgun design to T.J. Bennett, and T.J. Bennett kind of sat on it for a couple of years, And the story with it was that it was like a lose-lose situation for Bennett. It's like a very, you just looked at it from a business standpoint, you know what I mean? He ran Winchester, you know, so he wasn't like just some guy that cared about sharing guns with the world. He was just a savvy businessman. He said to himself, if I produce this automatic shotgun, there was no automatic shotguns before that. It was like John Browning came up, he's like, everyone was trying to figure out a way to do it. They were going from smokeless powder to from black powder to smokeless powder right at that time, and all the shells were different amounts of pressures and everything, and nobody could handle that. They were like, how would you be able to do this without a standardized ammunition? It's impossible. Browning figured out a way with friction rings, like a shock absorber kind of effect, to get it done. He did it. He solved the mystery and did it. So T.J. Bennett looked at it like, well, if I put this thing out and it's a failure, I fail. If I put this thing out and it's a success, I fail, because it's going to crush the sales of my 1897. It's going to crush the sales of basically every lever and pump action shotgun that there was out there. And he looked at it like the best thing to do with this design is just to have it go away, you know? And so, like everything else, he just wanted to just buy the design and just make it go away. But with this one, John Browning was acting a little bit different with this design, because most of his designs, he just sold the patent. He just sold the idea of it. They just bought the gun. You know, they just bought the idea of it. One shot, one payment, that was it. But around this time, John Browning started dealing with other companies. He started dealing with Colt, right here, say, making pistols. Started dealing with Fabrique Nationale, and some other companies had deals with him where he was getting royalties. So it wasn't like he just sold something once and got the money for it. That's it. Like every time one was sold, he would get a piece of it, and it was really his brother that was the John Browning's brother that was like the guy that ran the business side of things more. So he was the one that was kind of in charge of switching over to that. He's like, that seemed like a little bit better way to make deals, you know. So they said to T.J. Bennett, they wanted that. That's how they wanted that deal to go down. So it wasn't like it could be shoved under the carpet. It had to be something that was produced, and the deal was that it had to be made, and that because John Browning was like, no, this is too important for it to be, thrown in the garbage can. This has to be made, and I'm getting royalties off of it. And T.J. Bennett didn't want to hear it. So John Browning scooped that stuff up and left. And that's why you see that the original automatic shotguns were made first by Fabrique Nationale, because that's where he brought them to be made, and also to Remington. Well, right around that time, okay, so it's like, that's a pivotal time is when, and also he's in the middle of making machine gun for the Browning machine gun. He comes up with this design. Originally, look, see, and if you don't believe me, look, this is really cool. I could show you. Let me get to the spot here. Right around this spot in my John Browning book by Kurt Gentry. These show all the designs here. Here's the 1895 lever action. We know that one. And then here, right around this time, all of a sudden these guns are all in here. Never manufactured, never manufactured, never manufactured, never manufactured. All of these. These are all the designs. There's pictures of them that are out there. He made the original ones John Browning made. But look at all of these. All of these were never manufactured. Can you imagine? What a waste. Like, it would almost be really cool to get these patent drawings and just make them yourself. Like, they should be produced for people to, enjoy. Well, anyway, look at all of these that were never manufactured. It's crazy. That's why this book is cool, to show that kind of stuff. But basically, when we get to the pistols, when he first started screwing around with pistols, they were looking like this. Oh, here, there's an interesting. Where's that picture? Hold on. I don't know. There's a picture of him sitting in front of the machine gun. But basically, he started making pistols. These guys, these 38 caliber semi-automatic pistols. These were like the first designs. These aren't ones I think you could readily just go out and shoot, even if you own these things. These are probably, never really researched them much, but they're probably very expensive, and I'm not even sure if many of them were made. Till we get here. Fabrique Nationale, this 1900. I do not have one of these, but you'd think a John Browning guy would have to have one of these days. But I don't have one of these. This was the first semi-automatic pistol that he designed, and it seemed like he had made some before for Colt and stuff, but I think Colt was afraid of this thing. They didn't want to buy it. Fabrique Nationale scooped it up, and the friggin' thing was awesome. So then only a few years later, that's where this guy finally comes in. Sorry to go through this whole sordid story, but in 1900, Fabrique Nationale was cranking these out, and Colt was like, okay, yeah, let's do that. Let's make one of those. So right here, it says the fantastic success of the FN Model 1900, this guy, caused Colt to reconsider manufacturing a pistol based on the blowback principle. So these were the first blowback pistols. Then they made one in 9mm. He came out with one in 9mm, like a military gun. Never really researched that much. Don't know much about that guy, but that's kind of like where it leaves us right here. These things were freaking made forever. Here, look, I'll just bust it out one more time. Just the timeline of these things. Okay, this one is a 1923 vintage. It's called the Type 3. So I'm not really sure. I don't remember why I wrote that down. There's evidently different types of them. It's an 8-round detachable magazine, 3 3/4 inch barrel. And these were produced from 1903 to 1945. Approximately just over 500,000 of them made. And let me see if that's exactly what I got in the book here. Yeah, they did come out with one that this is in 32 caliber. They did come out with one in 380 Colt. That was a 7 capacity magazine that was introduced in 1908, and that stayed in production until 1945. This one actually, it wasn't discontinued until 1946. I guess I got it wrong in my book. Yep, 572,000 of them in 32, and 138,000 of them in 380. 381s are much rarer apparently. So a total for this gun of 710,224. Not a lot. They really took their time with these and took their care with making them, and they're a very, very precision made. They feel quality. They're gorgeous. So let's break this thing down a little bit. Let's show you now that all the gabbing is over. Man, it's just such a sordid story with him. Like, he was just so all over the place. He's making rifles. There's companies buying up his stuff and not even producing it. Could you imagine he loved the guns that he made so much. Could you imagine how terrible that was for him, that they were just being shuttled away? Like, the business got in the way of, of his, he was able to make these things, but they didn't have the ability to manufacture and crank out like hundreds of thousands of them, you know what I mean? Otherwise, he wouldn't have needed anybody else. But, yeah, when I first got this guy, it did not have the original magazine in it. And I had to do a little bit of tracing to find this magazine. For some reason, when you find these, they have like bare steel on the top and only colored near the bottom, blued near the bottom. But you got to watch out, because there's people that try to fake that to fool people into buying, into getting an aftermarket one and thinking that it's real. Now the takedown on these is really weird. You have to hold it back a certain amount while you turn the barrel. See, we're going to see, you know how we got into these, like, get out my dowel because I want to show you. We were checking out, like, the actions and how they worked in these, and like what exactly is this. Is just straight blowback. And then we dealt with others where they said, where it looked like it was blowback but it wasn't. And this straight blowback pistol, that's it. Nothing else happens here. The barrel is locked in position. You can see it doesn't turn, it doesn't move, it doesn't come back, it isn't engaged with the slide somehow and then disengage. It goes all the way back and all the way forward. And there's no little secrets going on here with turning barrels or anything that's hiding. So I can guarantee you that. And so yeah, it's just a locked barrel that doesn't move. It's just completely locked to the gun, and the exploding round, it's just made perfectly. The amount of spring pressure, the amount of resistance here is just made perfect, where the bullet will exit the barrel before the slide moves back enough to expose enough of the cartridge to cause a problem, or for any gases to be able to escape through, through here, through the port. So, straight blowback, finally. Nice and easy. John just kept it simple, right? That's it. So to take these down, there's like a little arrow. See this arrow over here? Well, let me catch it right. Gotta make sure. See that little arrow right there with the line? And then you would think supposedly that was originally meant where it lined up with here, so you knew exactly how far to open it. But it's not necessarily true, because it isn't 100% perfect. I think that was the idea, but it didn't really work. So you have to kind of have the slide back to a certain position as you turn the barrel to unlock it. And everybody always has their own way of doing this. They push the gun against something, or they do stuff. I have big hands. I figured out a really cool way. This is how I do it. I bridge the gap between, do it like this. I bridge the gap between here and here with my fingers, so I could just perfectly manipulate wherever I need the slide to be, just like this. And then you find that spot where it turns. There's a spot, but you see it's not an easy spot to find. It's very exacting. There it is. And then the barrel will rotate, and the barrel will come out, and the slide comes right off. That's how we do it. If you got big enough hands, I suggest you use it that way. It's nice. It contains everything, and you could easily manipulate it. What could be simpler than that? That's it. There's nothing else in here. This is just the trigger mechanism here. And I told you I'd show you that hammer. There's that hammer. So it is not hammerless. There's a hammer in there. I guarantee you. And this might look familiar here. These are those ribs that John Browning uses with his pistols to. That's what positively locks it. When you're pushing this in, the slide it back, putting it together, and you're turning this, you're locking it into place right there. So it'll just sit right there in those ribs there, and that's what locks it in. It doesn't move, it doesn't rotate, it doesn't do anything. That's just what locks it in there to be part of the gun. And if you didn't have to take it apart and take the slide off or everything, this could just be welded right on there. That's it. And you're going to see as we progress through some of these blowback pistols that there are some where the barrel and the receiver is just one piece, and everything else just kind of functions around it, and it's just literally one piece. The barrel like this, and it's just manufactured as one piece. We'll get to those, but for John Browning, he wanted to be able to take the barrel out and have this all disengaged like that. And it's pretty simple. So for putting it back together, you gotta make sure you don't make the mistake. A lot of people would think this goes in here because there's but it doesn't. This is like the the spring. It's like a keeper. You know, it's what keeps the spring from just winding. You know, the windings from just opening up. You know what I mean? It definitely goes in this way into the receiver. Then, and there's a plug in here. See it? There it is. This plug, you got to be careful you don't lose that or drop it when you take it apart. It kind of stays in there, but you do have to be aware that it's in there, and you just want it to fold back into place before we actually put it back together. Let's see. It's not going in where it's supposed to go, so we'll use our trusty dowel, and there we go, right back into place. So to put this back together now, it's kind of like a reverse procedure. We get to make sure we capture the spring in here right without getting it tweaked. There we go. And then we have to, once again, come back to, let's put the barrel in here now before we actually move it back. So the barrel, it goes in, and then it turns into a recess in here. You can see the recesses. It's in the slide this way. It gets out of the way. And now we need to just we get our fingers like that. See, and now I can manipulate. The slide exactly where it needs to go and just feel around until I feel that spot where it turns in. There we go. Trust me, that might look easy, and you say like, oh yeah, well that looked easy, but you're going to see you're going to be struggling with it. Like, you need 3 hands. You need to be able to hold it here, manipulate the slide here, and then turn the barrel. So you're going to be like, it kind of feels like you just need another hand. I've heard people actually describe it that you need 3 hands to take it apart. This is why it's a pain in the ass. You need 3 arms. But if you just do the holding and the slide manipulation with 1 hand, that's it. So you could do both together. Not even like I got a hand that's really huge to be able to do that. It's just where you grab it. Just do that just like you see it right here. It's like an eagle talon grabbing it, and then you could manipulate around to find that spot where it rotates right there. See? And you just manipulate around until you find that spot. There you go. And it's back together. Oh, and let's do a like to do this. Let's do a snap cap. I'll show you how smooth. This is the smoothest freaking action you'd ever believe. And these snap caps by now are all gouged up and dogged just from cycling through so many guns, checking function. That it's a true test that will it balk at ammo that's dirty or gritty, or if there's, it's a good test once these things start getting a little, they start getting a little chewed up. When these things start getting a little chewed up, they're perfect to tell if a gun is finicky. That, if the ammo is just slightly out of tolerance for any reason, whether it's that it's dirty or you have a little grit in the gun or whatever, is it going to complain? And this thing, go butter smooth, it loads and ejects. Look, it can even go slow like that. Look at that. Doesn't matter how slow, how fast you go or whatever. It's an amazing design. It really is. It's just the smoothest, most beautiful, sleekest looking design. And then it's the way it actually works and feels is just as slick and smooth. This slide, nothing feels smoother than the slide on one of these. And you could lock it open here if you want. There's like an extra notch here for the where the safety goes. And look inside there at that like feed ramp. How smooth and beautiful and polished that looks. What an amazing design. John Browning. The Colt Pocket Hammerless. 1903. What do we got on here? Colt's PTFA Manufacturing Company. Hartford, Connecticut, USA. Patented April 20th, 1897. December 22nd, 1903. The beautiful Colt emblem back here that you see on these. These grips, nice. The exclusions. Colt automatic, caliber 32, rimless, smokeless. I don't think that's necessarily true. Isn't the 32 isn't it semi-rimmed? Not sure. Look at these sights on here. Like, that ain't getting caught on nothing, you know? And it's not sighting down the gun. It's not really terrible. Yeah, they're small, but it's not horrible. These things aren't really made to be, like, taking a bead on something that's, like, 80 yards away. Like, these things are kind of made to, like, fire from your hip or maybe even from your pocket. I think they're called pocket guns because, like, in your pocket, you could reach into your pocket and turn it enough to be able to face whatever your, you know, the thread is and just shoot right through your pocket, even like a jacket pocket. They're definitely these things are definitely sleek. That's the word for it, sleek. So we're gonna. It's a shame I can't start with that 1900, but we'll start from here with some John Browning designs, and I think I'm gonna continue with. Let me see how many more. Maybe like pistol wise, we'll do. Maybe we'll do two more. We'll do this one, and then two more in progression, just to get a little John Browning action going in. I was getting a little jonesing on the John Browning a little bit, but I think that'll be fun. We'll stick with good old JB for 3 examples. So this is example number 1. See if you guys can figure out what's coming up next. I can tell you one thing: it doesn't have anything to do with Winchester finally, because he broke away. So now he was dealing with Colt, Fabrique Nationale, and he did not turn back. So neither will we. And thanks to everybody for the wonderful comments. Everybody's been very helpful and supportive, and I'm going to get out there to the range and get some action footage soon. So that'll spice things up. And until then, we'll see you all later. Take care.